Good morning, children. Let us start science life processes. So, first of all, what is life process? All the processes which keep the living organism alive and maintain the body function like growth, repair, reproduction. So, these are known as life process. Example is excretion, respiration. Now, what are nutrients? All of we are already acquainted with the nutrient word. Nutrient is the type of food which we take, which contain all the essential mineral, water, carbohydrate, protein, fat in the food. So, nutrition. Nutrition is defined as the process of intake of nutrients or food and its utilization for the organism in various biological activities. So nutrition, go through the definition. Now coming to the modes of nutrition. Modes of nutrition, there are three basic modes of nutrition: autotrophic nutrition, heterotrophic nutrition, and saprophytic nutrition. What is life process? That is, first of all the process which keep a living organism alive and maintain the body function is known as life processes. Example as reproduction, excretion, respiration, breathing, and all. Now coming to the nutrition and nutrient. What are nutrients? The food which we take, which contain all the essential things, that is protein, vitamins, mineral, carbohydrate, fat. These is known as nutrient. Now coming to the nutrition, it is defined as the process of intake of nutrients and its utilization. So how we take in the food and how we utilize it by the organism in various biological activities. Modes of nutrition. There are three basic modes of nutrition: autotrophic nutrition, heterotrophic nutrition, and saprophytic nutrition. Autotrophic nutrition. Auto and trophic. Auto means self, trophic means nourishment. So organisms which can manufacture their own food, they are self-dependent, are known as autotrophic organism or autotrophs, and the mode of nutrition is known as autotrophic nutrition. So organism, how they prepare the food? All green plants we know the process by which they can manufacture the food, that is most important, photosynthesis. So the organism prepared by their own food in presence of carbon dioxide, water, chlorophyll, and sunlight is known as photosynthesis. So equation is given: 6 molecule of carbon dioxide combined with 12 molecule of water to give the glucose molecule C6H12O6 plus 6 molecule of oxygen plus 6 molecule of water. Now, the process of photosynthesis. As you know, photosynthesis is a very important process on this on this earth, as it is the only process which makes the survival of all other organisms possible on the earth's surface. So, in the process of photosynthesis, first of all, the green plants which contain the chlorophyll in their leaves, they absorb the sunlight, and that sunlight converted into the chemical energy of the food by splitting the water molecule into hydrogen and oxygen, and the reduction of carbon dioxide also takes place to form the carbohydrate, as already we have seen the equation. Photosynthesis. So green plant contain chlorophyll which trap the solar energy and make possible the life on the earth's surface. So taking the major steps of photosynthesis, first of all, absorption of sunlight by the chlorophyll, then conversion of the sunlight into chemical form of energy and is splitting the water molecule into hydrogen and oxygen, and finally the reduction of carbon dioxide into the carbohydrate. So equation also we have seen, that carbon dioxide plus water in presence of sunlight gives carbohydrate and byproduct oxygen. Stomata are the tiny pores or small pores present on the surface of the leaves, and each stomata is a small pore surrounded by two kidney shaped cells known as guard cells, and along with that other epidermal cells. Now, mechanism of opening and closing of stomata. As stomata allow the gases to enter through this pore, now the guard cell swells when water flow into them, and this swelling of the guard cells leads to the stomatal pore to open, and when there is no flow of water, there is less water, the stomatal pore get shrinked, and by this the stomatal pore get closed. Heterotrophic mode of nutrition. Heterotrophic mode of nutrition is shown by the non-chlorophyllous organism or non-green plants or animal. So in this hetero means different and trophic means nourishment. So for the nourishment, if it depends upon plant or its product, they are known as heterotrophic nutrition. And the organisms can be herbivores, plant eaters, carnivores, flesh eaters, and omnivores, both plants and animal eaters. Another mode is the saprophytic nutrition, where organisms depend upon dead and decaying organic matter, like examples are fungus and bacteria. Nutrition in amoeba. Let us talk about the single cell amoeba. It is unicellular. So how these organisms take their nourishment or food? So the process is phagocytosis. Phagocytosis means engulfing the whole food. It engulfs the whole food by a projection like formation from its membrane, that is known as pseudopodia. Pseudo means false and podia means fit, false fit. Okay, and it surrounds whole of the food particle through the pseudopodia, and it forms the food vacuole, and inside the food vacuole enzymes get secreted and digestion takes place, and finally it absorbs all the nutrients and eject the waste product from the same pathway, that is food vacuole. Now coming to nutrition in human being. The food which we take are in the complex form like carbohydrate, protein, fat, vitamin, mineral. So they has to be digested or get simplified form. So the conversion of complex food material into simple form is known as process of digestion, and it takes place in the human by a specialized organ system that is known as digestive system. So let us talk about the digestive system of the human. Now the parts of alimentary canal or digestive system. It starts from mouth. So mouth contains teeth and tongue. The work of teeth is to crush the food material. Then there is a pair of salivary gland which secretes the saliva, and this saliva contains an enzyme known as salivary amylase or ptyalin, which breaks starch into maltose or simple sugar, and the digestion of starch or carbohydrate starts in the mouth itself. The next part is the esophagus. Esophagus means food pipe. From mouth, the food is taken and it enters into the stomach through the pipe known as esophagus. It is very large, approximately 7 meter, and food get entry by a special movement known as peristaltic movement, gradual contraction and relaxation of the esophagus muscle. Stomach. Stomach is the large organ and it expands when food enter through it. Now, the wall of the stomach secretes the hydrochloric acid, which activate an enzyme known as pepsin, which facilitate the digestion of the protein. Protein get converted into proteases and peptones, and this when the lining of the stomach secrete HCl or hydrochloric acid, it get acidic, and to protect it, the inner lining of the stomach is covered with the covered with the mucous membrane, and it protect the inner lining of the stomach. The next part is the stomach. Stomach is the large organ which expands when food enters into the stomach. Now the inner lining of the stomach secretes the HCl, hydrochloric acid, which acidify the medium and which help an enzyme known as pepsin to activate and to digest the proteins into proteases and peptones. Along with the HCl, it also secretes chemical that is known as mucus, which protect the inner lining of the stomach from action of acid under the normal condition. The part of alimentary canal, small intestine. Small intestine is the longest part of alimentary canal, and most of the digestion takes place in the small intestine. Now the first is the bile juice. The liver secretes the bile juice. It breaks the large fat molecule into the smaller one, and this process is known as emulsification. And then there is action of pancreatic juice also. Pancreas secretes the enzyme that is known as pancreatic juice, and it helps in the digestion of proteins and digestion of carbohydrate and lipid as well. And there is also the intestinal juice, that is the wall of the small intestine secretes the enzyme that is known as intestinal juice, and it converts protein into amino acid, complex carbohydrate into glucose, and fat into fatty acid and glycerol. Pancreas are the endocrine gland which secretes the pancreatic juice. It is present below the stomach. It produces the pancreatic juice which contain enzyme like trypsin, which help in digestion of protein, pancreatic amylase for digestion of carbohydrate, and lipase for breaking of the lipid or fat. Then the small intestine, the inner wall of the small intestine is present in the folded form or numerous finger-like projection called villi. And villi is richly supplied with the blood vessels. When all the digestion takes place in the small intestine, this digested food is absorbed by these blood capillaries, and it is been sent to every cell of the body. That process is known as assimilation. Small intestine is followed by the large intestine. It is wider and it consists of three parts: colon, cecum and rectum. Water from the undigested food is reabsorbed, and it also secretes the mucus. So we have already started life processes. Nutrition. So what we have studied till now is the type of nutrition, photosynthesis, nutrition in amoeba and other animals, nutrition in human beings, part of alimentary canal in the human being. So let us now study about the life processes. Next life process, that is respiration. So after digestion, the food enters into the different parts of the cells. So respiration, afterwards respiration takes place. So respiration is the process by which food is burnt or oxidized in the cell with the help of oxygen to release energy. It takes place in the mitochondria of the cells. Now, the energy released during respiration is used to convert ADP in presence of inorganic phosphate to ATP. ADP converted into ATP. Now, ATP is the energy currency or stored form of energy in the cell. Energy is stored in the cell in the form of ATP molecule. Whenever the energy is needed by the cell, ATP again break into ADP and it releases energy. The full form of ATP is adenosine triphosphate and full form of ADP is the adenosine diphosphate. Now, there are two types of respiration, aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. In aerobic respiration takes place in the presence of oxygen. It produces more energy and end product is carbon dioxide, water, and it takes place in the cytoplasm and mitochondria of the cell. Now, glucose in presence of oxygen, first of all in cytoplasm, it converted into 3-carbon pyruvate, and afterward in presence of oxygen in mitochondria, it further converted into carbon dioxide, water and energy in the form of ATP. In anaerobic respiration means the respiration taking in absence of air or oxygen. It produces less energy. The end product can be lactic acid or ethanol along with the few ATP molecule. Now, in anaerobic respiration, when it takes place in the muscle or animal cell, in the cytoplasm, glucose get converted into the pyruvate. It is in the presence of oxygen, and when there is absence of oxygen in muscle cell, pyruvate get further converted into lactic acid and energy in the form of ATP. And in anaerobic respiration like yeast or plant cell, again glucose converted into pyruvate. This always takes place in the presence of oxygen and in cytoplasm, and pyruvate in absence of oxygen, it converted into ethanol and energy. So here is the flow chart for the breakdown of glucose by various pathway. Glucose, first of all in cytoplasm, in presence of oxygen, gets converted into 3-carbon pyruvate plus energy is released. It can undergo in the 3 condition, that is in presence of oxygen. In mitochondria, it is normal respiration. It gets converted into carbon dioxide, water and ATP or energy. Then if pyruvate undergoes in absence of oxygen and if it is a animal cell or muscle cell, it gets converted into lactic acid and energy. And if it is in the plant cell like yeast, it gets converted into ethanol, carbon dioxide and energy in the form of ATP. Now, respiration in human. The main organ of respiratory systems are nostrils, nasal cavity, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, alveoli, lungs and diaphragm. Atmospheric air enters through the nostril. Now, inside the nostril, the hair and mucus trap the dust particle, and finally, after filtration, the air passes through the pharynx, larynx, trachea or windpipe, bronchi, and finally enters into the alveoli in the lungs. Now, the trachea or the windpipe has the C-shaped cartilage ring which prevent it from collapsing when there is no air in the trachea. Now, afterwards, the trachea is further subdivided into bronchi and further in small tubes called bronchioles, and which end in the tiny sac-like structure known as alveoli. Now, finally alveoli get the stored oxygen or air. The alveoli is supplied with blood capillaries where the exchange of gases takes place. Now, alveoli help to increase the surface area for the exchange of gases as it is present in the balloon form. Breathing. Breathing is the process of inhalation and exhalation of the air. Now, it is the physical process. Now, coming to the mechanism of breathing. When we breathe in air, the muscles of the diaphragm contract and move downward, and the chest cavity expands. As a result, whole volume of the chest cavity expands and air enters into the lungs. Diaphragm is the muscular wall between the thoracic cavity and the abdominal cavity. Now, the opposite, when we breathe out air, the muscle of the diaphragm relaxes and move upward, and chest cavity also contract. As a result, volume decreases and the air from outside goes into the lungs. The next life processes is the transportation. Now, talking about transportation in human being, in the circulatory system is the main transport system in the human being. It consists of blood, arteries, veins, capillaries and heart. Now, blood. As you know, blood transport food, oxygen, waste product. Blood consists of plasma, red blood cells or RBCs, white blood cells or WBCs, and blood platelets. What are the function of plasma? It transport the food, water, carbon dioxide, nitrogenous waste. Red blood cells transport oxygen and white blood cells kill harmful microbes and protect the body. And finally, the blood platelets help in the clotting of the blood and prevent the loss of blood during injury. The second is the arteries. Arteries carry pure blood from heart to different parts of the body. They are thick walled and they don't have valves in it. Only exception is the pulmonary artery. Now the veins. Veins carry impure blood from all parts of the body to the heart, and they have the thin wall and they have valves in it. Only exception is the pulmonary vein. And finally is the capillaries. They are very narrow blood vessels which connect arteries and veins together for the exchange of food, water, oxygen, carbon dioxide, etc. Heart. Heart is the main pumping organ of the body. It is muscular organ and pump blood to all parts of the body. Heart has 4 chambers. The 2 upper chambers are called atria or auricles and the 2 lower chambers are called ventricles. Ventricle pump blood to different organ. Its wall are thick than the auricle or atria. The right and left chamber are separated by a septum and it prevents mixing of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. The arteria and ventricles have valve between them to prevent the backflow of the blood. See this structure well-level diagram of the heart and practice in your notebook. Working of heart or circulation of blood. When the left auricle relaxes, oxygenated blood from the lungs flow into the pulmonary vein and enters into the left ventricle. And when this left ventricle contracts, the oxygenated blood is pumped out through the aorta to all parts of the body. After circulating through all parts of the body, the deoxygenated blood enters into the right atrium through the inferior and superior vena cava. And when this right atrium contracts, the right ventricle expands, the blood flow into the right ventricle. Again, when the right ventricle contracts, the blood is pumped to the lungs through the pulmonary artery. In the lungs, carbon dioxide is removed and oxygen is absorbed and the blood become oxygenated again. And again, it is ready to enter into the left atrium and the process repeat. Now, since the blood flow through the heart twice in one cycle, it is known as double circulation. Now, the next fluid is along with the blood, there is next fluid that is known as lymph. Lymph is a colorless fluid and it is present between the intercellular spaces of the cell. Now, it is formed from plasma and it escapes from the capillaries. Lymph drains lymphatic capillaries, which is in the form of lymph vessels or joined to form the large veins. Now, what is the function of lymph? It transports digested fat, drains excess fluid from the intercellular spaces back to the blood, and it contains lymphocytes also, which kills the germs and protect our body. Now, let us see the heart in mammals, bird, amphibian, reptile and fishes. Now, heart in mammals. As we have seen, mammals and birds have 4-chambered heart. They are separated by a regular septum. Right and left side is totally separated and it prevents the mixing of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. Why it is so advanced? Because they have to maintain the body temperature. In case of amphibians and reptile, the heart is 3-chambered and somewhat some amount of blood oxygenated and deoxygenated get mixed and their body temperature is same as the surroundings, so they do not require much oxygen. Now, heart in fishes, they are only two-chambered, as blood is oxygenated in the gills. Lungs is not functional in the fishes. After animal, transportation in plants. In plants, transportation of material like food, water, mineral takes place, and through the specialized tissue, that is conducting tissue, known as xylem and phloem. So first of all, let us talk about xylem. So xylem is the conducting tissue which transport water and mineral from the root to different parts of the plant. It consists of xylem vessels and tracheids. Now, water and mineral enter the root by the process known as diffusion. Then, due to transpiration, the suction force helps in the upward movement of water and mineral along the roots of the plants. Another conducting tissue is phloem. It helps in the transportation of the prepared food from green to non-green part of the plant. Now, transport of food from leaves to other part of the plant is known as translocation. Phloem consists of sieve tube and companion cells, and food transfer takes place against the concentration gradient. So, ATP molecules are consumed during the process of translocation. Due to osmotic pressure of water, it enters into phloem and help in the transport of the food material across the phloem. Now, the next slide process is the excretion. Excretion is a process by which waste product produced during metabolic activities is removed from the body. So waste is produced both in unicellular organism as well as in multicellular organism. So waste product removed from unicellular organisms by a simple process known as diffusion. Waste collected is removed out of the cell into the surrounding by the diffusion. In multicellular organism, the waste products are removed through the specialized organ. Now, talking about the excretion in human being, the excretory system consists of pair of kidneys, a pair of ureter, a urinary bladder, and a urethra. Each kidney has number of excretory units called nephrons, or you can say structural unit of kidney is the nephron. This is the well-leveled diagram of the human excretory system. Nicely, you just see the diagram. This is the level diagram of nephron. You can locate the glomerulus, distal convoluted tubule, and collecting tubule, Bowman's capsule, etc. This is the structural unit of the kidney. Nephron is the structural unit of kidney. So kidney is made up of millions of the nephron. What is the basic structure of nephron? Nephron consists of a cup-like structure known as Bowman's capsule. It contains number of capillaries called glomerulus or glomerulus filter. The Bowman's capsule leads into the tubular structure which joins finally the collecting duct. Now, the renal artery brings the nitrogenous waste like ammonia, urea, uric acid along with excess water and salt into the nephron or the Bowman's capsule. Then Bowman's capsule filter the nitrogenous waste, water and salt, and then the filtrate is passed through the tubular structure known as collecting duct. The waste then pass through the ureter, then finally it gets stored in the urinary bladder and sent through the urethra as the urine. Now, the useful products like amino acid, glucose, salt are reabsorbed by the capillaries which are surrounding the tubular structure and goes into the renal vein. Now coming to the excretion in plants. Plants also need the process of removal of the waste, that is known as excretion. So in plants, the gaseous waste produced during respiration like CO, carbon dioxide, and photosynthesis, the waste or byproduct during photosynthesis is oxygen. It is removed through the small opening in the leaves known as stomata. Excess of water is also removed from the stomata. The process is known as transpiration or removal of water through evaporation through the plant surface is known as transpiration. Some waste products stored in the leaves are also removed as the leaves dry and fall off. Then the waste products stored in the vacuoles are also removed. Some waste products like gums and resins are stored in old xylem cells or tissue, and and some waste products are removed through the roots also.